Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lunch and Learn that is being hosted by the Louisiana Emergency Management, Disability, and Aging Coalition. We will have the staff from the Louisiana Assistive Technology Access Network present, and they're going to present on access to assistive technology and DME, which is durable medical equipment, after a natural disaster. I'm Bambi Palazola. I'm the Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs, and just thank all of you for joining in for this informative session. So now I will turn it over to LATAN for their presentation.
Thank you, Bambi. And thank each of you for sharing your lunch with us, not literally, but at least your lunch time with us to learn a little bit about emergency, or a little bit more, I hope, about emergency response and some preparation. I'm Yakima Black, and my colleagues joining me for this presentation is April Bell and also Megan Plisky. What we hope to gain and our intent for today's webinar is to share information about EMDAC, our processes for emergency response, to provide resources to access assistive technology and durable medical equipment following a natural disaster, as well as to share quick tips for disaster preparation. So just a little bit about LATAN. Our name is the Louisiana Assistive Technology Access Network, and we are the federal assistive technology program for the state of Louisiana. There are 50 AT Act programs in the country, as well as 6 territories, relatively doing the same thing. However, our mission in Louisiana is to help people of all ages with functional limitations or disabilities gain independence at work, at school, and at home. And I said those out of order on purpose because at home is when we talk about natural disasters, we are not necessarily, or not only speaking of what happens in someone's home, but we talk about inclusion within the community. So home for us is this more broad meaning of where you live and within your communities. And if people are aware of us, we've been around for about a little over 30 years, and most people know us by our short name, LATAN. So what exactly is AT and DME? And just give you a little bit, the technical definition, or the one that we use, is that AT is best described as a device, a tool, software, an app used to increase, maintain, or improve the quality of life of a person who is living with a functional limitation or a disability. There are some different types of AT that are categorized as hard technologies, such as maybe your computer, or soft technology like the application on your computer, or there's some additional, there's high tech and then low tech. I no longer use readers. These are actually prescription glasses that I have to wear now, but the glasses that we wear are also a type of assistive technology. There are some mainstream technologies that I think people don't necessarily recognize that are assistive technologies, because they have become more mainstream as technology has advanced. Some of those that we're more aware of are asking Google or Siri for the nearest gas station, or a GPS system, or even motion detectors or motion lights that come on to allow lighting in dark areas around our homes. We don't necessarily think about those as assistive technologies because everybody uses them now, and not necessarily because they have a functional limitation or a disability. That is good news because that also reduces the cost of certain types of technologies. But then there are more high-tech technologies such as eye gaze that allows someone who communicates differently or who lives with paralysis to allow for commands to be able to be given. And I cannot go without mentioning that if we're not thinking about a soft technology, but very important, is our ASL interpreters that are here that offer other ways of communication. That too is, they're human, but they are assistive technology. In the supportive support coordinators world or waiver services, we know of personal care attendants, same thing. With durable medical equipment or DME, that's equipment or supplies that's ordered by your doctor. We mostly are, I think that those are most common for us when we think about AT and what's, equipment that helps someone, but they include supplies as well. So we're talking about wheelchairs, walkers, canes, rollators, maybe mobility type of equipment as well. But it also includes supplies such as oxygen or diabetic testing strips or even briefs or diapers for incontinence. There's a larger range, I believe, of durable medical equipment and supplies than there are with technology, at least that we think about in this sense. So LATAN is one of the members, as Bambi said, of the Louisiana Emergency Management Disability and Aging Coalition. It's a very long name, much like LATAN's name, and so it did need an acronym. So EMDAC is what we're most familiar with. EMDAC's mission is to advocate for and support emergency management efforts that serve all people, but particularly those with disabilities and or who are aging. So we, as a group, we believe that the needs of all people, particularly those who have disabilities and those who are aging, must be carefully considered and adequately addressed before, during, and after a disaster or emergency situation within the state. I believe that, and I know there are people on here that if I'm incorrect about timing, would correct me, but I believe that it was certainly following what we learned as a state after Hurricane Katrina, and learned a little bit more in Katrina and Rita in 2005, and learned a little bit more about that there is more of a necessity to pay attention to people with more unique needs during Hurricane Gustav in 2008. And thus was born EMDAC with a group of folks that just said, and I'm going to talk about those folks. But the group that essentially said, we have to start in a more collaborative way of figuring out how we seamlessly provide support to prepare. And then also, how do we respond to the needs after a disaster has taken place here? And a lot has been learned since 2008. I think we do a good job, and I think we're still learning. So the membership of EMDAC includes the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs, Elderly Affairs, GOSEP, or the Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, the State Independent Living Council, which has members they have independent living centers across the state, and collaboratively form one to help. Trach Mamas of Louisiana, the American Red Cross, FEMA. However, while those are some core groups of folks that we can reach out to in the interim when there isn't a disaster, as we think about how we prepare and plan and convene ourselves. Once there has been a natural disaster, the agencies just mentioned, as well as a bunch of other organizations such as the Department of Health, Social Services, Orleans Parish Management and Public Health Departments, groups like Families Helping Families, and other types of organizations and providers as a whole are come together to start to talk about where are the needs, what do we do? And I'm going to speak a little bit more about that momentarily. So the goals are the goals of EMDAC are one, to provide information and support that strengthens and expands parish, state, and national emergency management efforts regarding disability-related and/or age-related issues. So those are pretty broad, by the way. So there are a myriad of topics that are discussed during when we are in full activation following a natural disaster, and then also in preparation. But second goal is to support and contribute to capacity building efforts for emergency managers, support providers, advocates, and as well as individuals with disabilities, their family members, caregivers, and those who are aging. And 3, to develop and support resources and projects that better provide for the needs of people with disabilities and/or those who are aging. And again, it's before, after, and during a natural disaster. Okay, so as I mentioned, what happens after or following a natural disaster? One of the realities that we know is that if we're speaking of a natural disaster such as a hurricane in the South, or an ice storm or a tornado in the northern parts of the state, I think we also had some tornadoes this past year in South Louisiana, or we're talking about the global pandemic. The fact is that for those of us who are not only in our regular lives, our efforts are responsible for caring for and providing for, in some capacity, the needs of people. So if you're a human service organization, we are concerned with, just in and of itself, how we respond and what happens during a disaster. But the reality is those disasters also happen to the people who are designed to help, right? So that being said, we have to say that when the dust settles and it's safe for folks to go out, EMDAC immediately convenes, and along with those multiple departments and within state agencies mentioned previously, to discuss really immediate needs, how we coordinate the resources for people with fragile health needs, who may have been evacuated to shelters, or who may have elected to shelter in place. Those phone calls began to come in. I also want to say that if whatever happens in the southeast or South Louisiana relative to a storm, it does impact the northern part of the state, because many people will evacuate north to parishes that are higher ground and safer. And then they also can evacuate to one of our neighboring states, Texas or Mississippi as well. And those areas and those issues end up coming together, and we may end up having to facilitate services and resources to people who are no longer in the disaster area at that moment. I failed to mention a moment ago, when I talking about emergencies, we say natural disaster because we're most familiar with it, but during the pandemic, in the height of the pandemic, EMDAC and among several agencies and a host of provider serving agencies were on calls on a regular basis, trying to do something that was impacting all of us. And it was also unknown. It was uncharted territory. We knew how to respond to a hurricane. We've been doing that a couple of years, and how to prepare people. But during the pandemic, new topics, new things came up with social isolation, and how do you keep someone who has fragile health needs from the person who needs to come into their home to help them, but there is a communicable, highly contagious and deadly communicable disease that would prohibit someone from even being able to help. We saw and talked about technologies during that time and how to get access to those technologies, such as your computers, or we clearly all start using Zoom. Zoom has become, and one of those soft technologies that I mentioned is an application, and became very useful. It in fact is allowing us to do what we would normally in previous years have done in a public place, a conference room, et cetera, but it allows us now to be wherever we are in the state and continue to communicate and continue to provide resources to each other. But things like internet access and hotspots or tablets, using FaceTime, all of those technologies became apparent needs during the pandemic. So this is what happens in my chart. I'm going to explain through here how this looks for me. I'm going to say also that during 2020, you guys remember that it was during the pandemic and there were 3 major hurricanes. And our usual way of how we connect with the shelter and then connect with the shelter or go to someone's home to provide resources for assistive technology and DME, we were not able to do so. And so, because there were no congregated areas in shelters at that year, there were about 11,000 people, if I remember correctly, who were in hotels throughout mostly in New Orleans, but in other areas of the state. And the effort to navigate getting access or providing people access to durable medical equipment or assistive technology that they may have lost or had to leave behind because of those storms was a bit of a challenge. That 2020 taught us a little bit and a little bit more. And then we learned a little bit more during Hurricane, I think it was Laura. I think it was Laura in 2021, when we could go back into the shelters. It was a little bit of a more coordinated effort. I think because of those lessons learned. 211, who is, I believe, hosted by the Department of Health, became more utilized as case management, and the leadership there, for 211 were a part of the expanded group of EMDAC and provided calls and information to us as to how the types of information that they provide, which includes where can you find cooling stations or food or water, how can you access assistive technology. 211 representatives received just a ton of information that they in fact were able to coordinate with members of EMDAC and vice versa. Then there's the Louisiana Red Cross, and then Red Cross nationally were volunteers. They were both in the hotels in 2020, and then they're also deployed to the shelters. They typically will conduct or help conduct those needs assessment, but again, ideally they're helping to run the shelters. And so there's a lot of dynamics going on. Sometimes not because you're looking at everybody. We're not necessarily only focused on people with special health needs, but there's other people who evacuated as well. And so that Red Cross has a broader focus and a need there. And so then there's the shelter managers, all keeping in contact with or having a mutual relationship with EMDAC, where information is shared about someone's needs, who they are, where they're located, who can assist. That information goes from EMDAC and then up to LATAN and other members of EMDAC that start to facilitate all types of needs. Sometimes those needs are specifically related to assistive technology and DME. And sometimes it has to do with maybe there is an aging person who is aging person. Make sure I did not say the wrong word. An older adult who did not evacuate, but was relying on Meals on Wheels, and a neighbor may have contacted 211, who got in touch with EMDAC or directly to LATAN and said, hey, this elderly couple is in their home and they are they're in need of food, and how can we get resources there? EMDAC in turns, LATAN receiving that information, reaches out to another member on EMDAC who is able to provide that specific resource. In this case, it was through the Governor's Office of Elderly Affairs to a local or parish council on aging to coordinate how those particular services are provided. And so I want to mention here though, and with FEMA, before I say that, FEMA has always, usually, when there's a disaster, FEMA is on the ground. Our regional partners with FEMA are here, and their goal is to try to help folks get back into their homes or in temporary housing. And so there really is a federal, state, and local collaboration among these agencies to, as quickly as and as efficiently as possible, meet the needs of people following a disaster. If we're talking about the pandemic, while a disaster is taking place. So there are other agencies that also provide assistive technology, durable medical equipment. One of the independent living councils in the Alexandria area already in contact with their counterparts or people who donate to them, and receiving cases and cases of water that can be disseminated. Trach mamas, if LATAN does not have available special needs like respiratory supplies, medical equipment supplies, if we don't have those, then Trach mamas has them. And the coordination goes, and I thought about it, I should have used a different sort of flow, because it really should have been one that was back and forth and vice versa among all of these organizations, because it isn't just a 1, 2, 3 step and this is how it goes, but it could be that Silk found out that there was something that was needed and contacted LATAN directly. LATAN contacts trach mamas or even FEMA to try to get some additional assistance. And then maybe the Red Cross volunteer was able to contact another organization. Either way, all of the way in which that we are able to work collaboratively together, we also are keeping a spreadsheet which has the people that we help, the shelter that we went out to, the types of needs that are needs for AT or DME or supplies that are that need to be tracked and documented, so that one, we're not all doing the same thing, is the most important part. What we have learned to be is a lot more seamless with the coordination of how we are sharing information and then executing delivery of those supplies and resources to people. And so I know there's a group, at least 200 people or so who are here, but I don't know how much you all know. But essentially, EMDAC convenes with all of our partners, and each of us has ways in which we receive information. I certainly value 211, and as well as the tag team of the other agencies that we have been able to reach out to say, we don't have this supply, but we have this type of equipment. And what LATAN can do is take the equipment that we've pulled from various sources, and then we begin to deliver that to someone's home or to a shelter. We have, if someone has evacuated to Shreveport, we have contacts with maybe another agency in Shreveport who is working with that individual and meet them in Alexandria, so that we're coming from Baton Rouge and we're able to do a handoff of whatever those equipment and supplies are. And then that person's needs are essentially met. And so while this has last year, was it last year? No, 21, I think, was our last hurricane, knock on wood. I think this presentation it's on purpose and timely because we're about a month and a half out. No, I think June 1st, we're about 3 weeks out from the start of hurricane season. So I think that what we're talking about is timely, but again, each year, I believe that we learn a little bit more as people's needs change about how we are providing access to AT and DME. Before the next slide, I want to say that the way this happens is not, I know I did not mention this, but the reason why there is a need is not just because someone has a fragile need, physical need or a behavioral health need that wasn't met throughout a storm, but oftentimes when at the height of an evacuation, people have to, dependent upon how they evacuated, and as we know, sometimes that may be by a little pirogue or a small van, however it needs to take place, those small spaces or limited spaces, transportation-wise, means that people have to often leave their equipment behind. So it seems like not a big deal, but if you were physically picked up by, 2 family members who lifted you out of your home, and they didn't bring the rollator or the walker that you use or the bedside commode that you rely on, or they may have forgotten, or it was damaged in water or in rain, some of the technologies that you utilize on a regular basis. And so the equipment was damaged. LATAN is able to provide the resources that we do physically with AT and DME, set aside for emergency response, because once there's been a disaster activated, we are able to, and we're thankful for it, receive small flash grants from national organizations, and our network of ACT providers across the country will reach out to us and say, hey, what do you need? It may take a week or so to get that stuff shipped. Sometimes it has to be shipped by freight. So it may take a week or so, but we get these donations, and that's what allows us to have resources to also share with people who will need them, so that they can have them and they don't have to return them back to us. In fact, no one's thinking about returning equipment that's needed when in fact you are trying to figure out about your home life and your home situation at that point. So it's one of the burdens that we are fortunate to take off just take away from someone by doing so. And all we did was collect the equipment, found out what your needs are, collect the equipment, and then donated it to where you are located, no matter where that is. And I am, okay. All righty, I think one of my colleagues is up next.
Alrighty. Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Plisky, and I am very, very grateful that you have come to enjoy your lunch with us today. So as Yakima was talking about within the shelters, oftentimes there is a needs assessment. Most of the time it is conducted by volunteers, usually Red Cross nurses, but it can vary. And they have found within those needs assessments that oftentimes people will need medications such as insulin, blood pressure medications. It could be behavioral health medications. And then also that equipment that we've been talking about, the assistive technology or the durable medical equipment. So we're gonna go to the next slide and get into some more detail. Yakima, would you mind moving to that next slide? Thank you. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So the most common DME requests that we have historically found are mostly for those mobility devices. So wheelchairs, rollators, walkers, sometimes bedside commodes as well. Most of the requests are for the bariatric equipment, but sometimes we do get requests for the regular sized items. And then we also get requests for medical supplies like hygiene items such as briefs and wipes, and also dietary supplies like Ensure and Boost. And then less common, we get requests for breathing equipment like oxygen or other equipment, and sometimes diabetic shoes as well. So we really encourage people to remember these items if possible, but these are some of the most common things that we have gotten requests for and have distributed in the past. Wonderful. So this next slide includes a big list of AT that we have found people want when in the shelters, but then also these are just some of our ideas that could be helpful in, just keeping the stress at a low enough or a lower level than, what could be. So one of those things is a portable solar battery system. Oftentimes we do see some sunshiny days after a natural disaster. And so trying to utilize that solar powered, when our electricity is out. Weighted blankets can be really helpful to relax. Eye masks, sometimes it's not to people's darkness preference. I know I like to sleep in absolute pitch black, and so eye masks can be helpful for sleeping and even just to have some calming time in those shelters. Noise canceling headphones and earbuds can be helpful. As we know, there are going to be a lot of people around and can be echoey in those areas. So bringing something to cancel out the noise, and also, we are involved in helping provide some of these materials too. Small portable fans, adaptive utensils and dishes, long-handled zippers and locks for suitcases can be helpful. Most suitcases that I've ever found have pretty short zipper handles, and so if you can get something to extend just to make it easier to get in and out of suitcases can be beneficial for people. And then also magnifiers for reading documents. Alrighty, so I'm going to now hand it over to April.
Hello, my name is April Bell, and what we are getting ready to discuss first is just some key information that'll be needed for referrals. So this may be some information that we'll ask you directly, or if working with another agency to gather some information, they may ask an individual. So first, we'd like to know the name, age, and address. And so this is important because we need to know if you are far away from home or if you're still at home and we have to deliver something to that home address. So your home address is super important. Next, any cell phone numbers for the individual or family members. So getting in contact with that person is important just in case we have any additional questions about information that we received, or if we need to confirm something. So if we're delivering, we want to confirm an address or confirm a measurement, we need to be able to get in contact with the individual or their support person. Needing information about the disability, chronic illness, or any other functional limitation or newly obtained injury. So that was a long one, but we want to know everything about what you're experiencing. So if someone is a quadriplegic and maybe they have been sitting for a while, we need to know if there's a pressure sore. So all of the details about that disability is important. So when we're making recommendations, we're not just saying, okay, well, we got a wheelchair to fit you and we forgot about the pressure sore that you're experiencing. Or you may have obtained an injury during your evacuation or in transport. And so knowing if there's a newfound disability or a newfound injury so that we can know if we need to refer you out, like Yakima was speaking about earlier with working with other agencies, determining a need basis. So does this come before this? Should we refer them here? Is there something else that's needed? Height and weight is needed to properly match someone for a wheelchair or a rollator walker. And so again, having their phone number is important because they may need some other specific modifications to that wheelchair. They may need straps around their feet, or they may need a tennis ball on their walker. So being able to contact that person is really important in this process. Knowing the physician's name, pharmacy, and DME provider. So in the event that you have used assistive technology or DME in the past, being able to contact that provider and get some information on devices that you previously used, so we can do our best to match it with what we have in our inventory. A list of medications, the name and the dosage. So this is important just in case you're taking a medication that may cause side effects. So like irritation to the skin. That's very important for when we're providing any type of wheelchair accommodations, to making sure we're selecting the correct material. Exposure to any dangerous chemicals. So that goes back to, again, on a needs basis. So if you were exposed to any dangerous chemicals, we are going to work on getting you some assistive technology and DME, but is there a referral that we can make to assist you because of the exposure you encountered? Assistive devices currently in possession or previously used and left behind. So again, this helps us to kind of understand better what you've currently been using. Can we match what you've used already? Do we have something similar? Do we want to give you something that's a little bit more upgraded or different? If you've left something behind, what are your plans are going back to get it? How soon do you plan to go back and get it? And then the number of days displaced and the number of days without your medication or DME. So just like my colleagues were saying earlier, you may be displaced or in another city and you don't have your medication and you've been without it for a while. How can we make a referral and help you get that sooner? Or how long have you been without your DME, and is it essential to your daily functioning? Well, I know let me rephrase that. How heavily does your independence on the technology or the DME? How soon do we need to get it to you? All of the needs are urgent, but just knowing all of that information is important.
April, can I interject just momentarily?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It just occurred to me regarding, I just want to provide a little clarity around the information about a person's physician and their DME provider. We found, and this was new, it happened because of the lack of availability in both 20 and 21. So during the pandemic and those hurricanes, but also hurricanes in 21, was that we received requests for in-home use ventilators, and also because of the impact of those storms to the current providers in someone's parish that were supplying oxygen on a regular basis, we received lots of calls, and it wasn't just us, 211 and the other members of EMDAC would receive calls of someone who was sheltered in place, but their DME provider who normally provided those particular resources were not available due to the storm. And we needed very pertinent information from the DME provider, because these are all insurance-based. Ventilators are not, and nor is oxygen. Those are not typically DME resources that we have on hand, and they do require a script. Providing, knowing who your DME provider was, or the prescribing physician, and also your insurance information, allowed us to be able to facilitate the coordination of another DME provider who was on safe ground, and then the transport of those resources back to the individual who needed them. So it was it was a coordinated effort, but without those key details, and there was a couple of times where we didn't have it, or the person only knew the facility's name, but they didn't know the doctor's name. And they knew the DME provider, but that DME provider was not there, and they didn't remember the doctor who had prescribed the oxygen or the ventilator or the home ventilator, because it had been so many years. And so kind of information you take for granted because you don't know that you're going to need it, but we will kind of case manage that and help to connect the dots and connect people with resources outside of that so that it can be done. But it's hard to do without that key information, specifically for respiratory equipment that requires a prescription. April?
Okay, I'm back. So just to talk about some quick tips to prepare for a natural disaster. And this is just seriously a short list because there are way more things that we can do to prepare. But just to make sure that we're charging all of our technology, communication and assistive devices. So that includes cell phones, computers, any speech generated devices, any other assistive devices used for communication. And it's important so that you can stay aware, you can communicate with someone if you need assistance afterwards. And so just making sure everything is charged in case there's a power outage after after the storm has passed. Store water and non-perishable food items. So when there's a storm coming, the stores go crazy and things are out of stock very quickly. So just making sure that you have enough water and non-perishable food items in the event the area cannot be restocked with food and water for a long period of time. You are okay at home with nourishment. Secure your important documents and a sufficient amount of medications. So securing your documents is important just in case you have damage to your home and you need to contact your home insurance. Or if you do have to travel, you have all of your identification documents with you. So there's no hassle of you trying to obtain additional copies of those things. Again, with medications, if there's a power outage, pharmacies are closed. So there may not be a timeline on when you'll be able to re-up on any medications that you're taking. So just making sure you have enough prior to going into weathering the storm. Preparing a first aid kit. So if there is a injury during transport or something small going on, you have access to things like Neosporin, Band-Aids, or other things that are included in a first aid kit. You want to grab your flashlights and batteries. So batteries are not only good for flashlights, but if you use just a regular radio, if their Wi-Fi is down and you can't access the internet, you can use those batteries for powering up your radio to know what's going on around you as well. Gather sanitary personal hygiene products. So I know earlier we talked about those things being requested if someone is displaced because of the natural disaster, and they may come in a shortage, or we may only be able to give out a certain amount of time, a certain amount because of what we have. So just gathering some of that in advance to make sure you're taken care of before transport or while staying in place. Keeping enough cash. So banks go down, credit card machines go down. If you and your family need to travel or purchase anything, you have access to cash to do so. And if you do plan on evacuating, or you're not sure, you want to shelter in place and decide later, just having a bag with your toiletries and a couple of days of clothing packed. So, you know, you're ready to go in the event, you're ready to get in the car and get out. And so here we just have a couple of slides of different, a list of contact information. So some of the organizations listed are ones that we did speak about in the presentation. And some of the other links included are helpful links that you can go to sign up for, like 911 calls. You can go to get a game plan and find a list of what you should do when preparing in the evacuation if you want to stay notified of what's going on. So we've got a bunch of different places you can contact here. And then we've also got LATAN's number. So we've got LATAN's phone number and webpage there. I did see in the chat, someone asked about assistive technology being accessible in the event there isn't a natural disaster. And Bambi did answer that for us. Thank you. We do have access to assistive technology year round. And here's just the second page of list of contact information and helpful information that we have prepared. And we can share the slides with contact information on it for you.
So this concludes the information that we have prepared by slides. However, I see, and there is enough time, let's see, oh, that's good timing, to allow for questions and answers. And there is a question in the chat. I'm gonna read it and anyone can answer, April or Megan. So the question is, because I don't know if you all can see this question, so I'm just gonna read it. I'm wondering why speech generating device is not being recognized as DME needs when it comes to disaster. It is my knowledge that a sign language interpreter without proper credentials would not be allowed to enter the disaster zone. So how is communication being provided to those who need communication access? I think that's a great question, Jeff, and I'll take that first. I heard April mention as one of the devices, or mention about a speech generating device a couple of slides ago, but we should have mentioned as an example these speech generating device. There are some that are high tech, that are mid tech, and even low tech and portable speech generating devices, depending upon what's needed. I believe there is a coordination, as we have here today, for ASL interpreters to be a part of those shelters. How we coordinate that, I'm not quite sure. I think it could be coordinated in a myriad of different ways. LATAN has speech generating devices, various types that are available. I can't say that we've ever received more than a handful of those types of requests, but they are available. And so what we've provided here today has been a quick list of historical type of requests, but again, it's not exhaustive. And once you've met one person with a particular need, you've met one person. So we could continue and likely will find people with various types of needs. Some of the examples that we mentioned, like the weighted blanket or the noise cancellation headphones, or the eye mask, we know because we know those, and those were mentioned particularly because And it's something that we had not thought about historically, but over the past year, realized that we were not thinking about what it would be like to go into a 500 bed or 1,000 bed plus shelter, and you live with autism. And what would that feel like? And what does it feel like for me, and my own anxiety with congregating with people that I don't know. And so I think that EMDAC continues to talk and think about, as they come up, continue to think about ways in which to meet the needs of various people as we're open to it. Next question is from Brandy Bordelon and says, encourage for who are DDBHH and their family interpreters. Oh, please join Louisiana DDBHH Disaster Survivors Support Facebook page, a well-known resource page for our blind, deaf, blind, hard of hearing community. Thank you, Brandy. And thank you, Brandy, because one of the things that we thought about was, oh, okay, I'm gonna, I see it, Bambi. One of the things that we talked about here was when we create these contact lists, we know that there's far more other resources there. So they're never exhaustive, but we continue to receive resources and are open to them. Brandy, I'm sorry, Bambi, you had a comment or or a question to a response?
I did not. I just put that you answered them live.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All righty. Are there any more questions? Those are really great questions. A really great question and a good share of some additional resources. Oh, let's see.
The Facebook page, let me go back to that. I'll tell you what it is.
Okay.
The Facebook page is the Louisiana DDBHH Disaster Survivors Support Facebook page. And that was by Brandy Bordelon, who is a member of EMDAC, and she facilitates that page. And so I just want to thank Yakima and her team from LATAN with this great information, and just really appreciate their partnership with EMDAC. They are just so essential to our response after disasters. So really, really thank them for being such a great member of EMDAC. We by EMDAC will try to host these lunch and learns more often, and to give this hopefully good information, will continue to be good information to help us to be prepared and be ready to respond to the needs of the disability and aging community when we have disasters. And by the way, this is Bambi again. And Yakima, I had several questions of people asking, can we send the presentation or the PowerPoint?
Sure, we can share. Are they want the whole presentation, or are they wanting the contacts list?
They're asking for the PowerPoint.
The PowerPoint? Oh, sure, we can share it.
Okay.
And Bambi,
we'll share this, and we're recording it. I'm sorry.
You like me to send that to you, and you
just send it to me, and I will send out to the people who registered and attend. I'll send out that along with a link to the recording.
Okay.
So thank you, guys. If there's nothing else, we will go ahead and and break
Thank
back
you.
to our work day.
Thank you all thank you for your attention, and we appreciate the opportunity to share. Y'all take care.
Thank you, interpreters.